What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to another video. If this is your first time stopping in, thank you for joining me. I'm really excited for today's episode because we are completely transforming the ride quality of my 2024 Harley Davidson Road Glide. We've got a package from Ohlins behind us. They are their Nix 22 cartridges that are going in the front forks. Along with that, we have a set of Arlen Ness gold fork tubes that are gonna really look good and match the HD779 reservoir shocks that we have on the rear. What's up, Dan?
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. All right, so as you guys can see, we have Dan here now. He's going to be helping us out and figuring it out as we go. So back to the regular program. We're going to go over ease of install. I'm going to take you guys through the entire process. So if you ever thought about doing it yourself, you could. And obviously we'll go for a test ride afterwards. I've got my buddy Dan here helping me out. We're just going to jump right in. Yeah. All right, you guys, so behind us here we have all of the stuff that we're gonna need. Not the tools yet, I'm not sure what they are. Obviously when we get into the process, I'll let you guys know along the way. But we have our gold Arlen Ness fork tubes. Pretty sweet. They do not match the Ohlins gold quite perfectly. I looked at a few of the different brands and none of them are a perfect match, so it's pretty close and it's gonna be just fine. These are the stock length. I decided not to go with +2s and I have a pretty good reason for that, which I think you guys will wanna stay tuned throughout the video to find out about, because there are quite a few reasons that you should probably not go with a +2 cartridge, especially on these new bikes. So we have our Ohlins cartridges. They are your stock length. As I was saying, these springs are set up for my needs. And we've got the damper hold-up tool, pull-up tool, all that stuff. That is included with the kit if you order from Get Lowered and you pick that option. Instructions, 2 quarts of high-performance suspension fluid. We've got a suspension fluid level tool. We've got a 48mm seal driver. I don't have a 49, which is what you're supposed to use, but it's gonna work just fine because it's 2 halves. That's what I used on my Kawasaki KX250F. And we have some dust seals for the fork tubes. If you're not gonna be running your cowbells, which we are not, you're gonna need those. You got some Loctite. You're gonna definitely want some brake cleaner. What else? Anything else you can think of, Dan? You know, we'll figure it out as we go. I've never done fork tubes or cartridges on a Harley, so it's not rocket science. We'll figure it out as we go. So let's go ahead and jump in. We've got the bike jacked up here on a regular car jack, and then I've got jack stands. For some reason, I'll spend a ton of money on suspension performance parts on the bike, but I won't just buy a freaking motorcycle jack, so is what it is. It's super sturdy. We'll be fine. So put you guys down and we'll start disassembling, let you guys know what tools we're using along the way and anything we run into. All right, you guys, so first things first, we're gonna go ahead and remove the front fender. It's just 4 1/4-inch Allen bolts. Alrighty, so now that we've got the fender off, we're gonna be doing this pinch bolt here, and in true Harley fashion, it's a 6mm this time instead of a standard. So for all of you guys in my comments, oh, everything should be standard. These bikes aren't fully made in America. All of the parts are not made in America anymore. It's a cluster. All right, so our axle is a 19mm Allen. And break that loose. All right, so we're gonna slip this axle out, just like that, and the wheel should be able to just fall right away, taking the spacers with it. All right, so now that we have the axle out, you can just go ahead and rotate your forks like so. Okay, so next thing is going to be removing the caliper bolts. There are 2 on each side. They're a 12.10 millimeter, and we want to go ahead and grab some zip ties so they don't just hang there. Alrighty, so we're going to run these calipers out. And I've got a bungee right here to hang them. You don't want to let them stretch on that brake line for however long they're going to be apart. Same thing on this side. You also have your ABS bracket and ABS sensor there. All right, so next thing we're gonna do is remove the little clamshell nacelle here. We've got our Phillips up front. We've got another Phillips under here. Just pry that up carefully. Got our 3/8 on each side here. All right, and then from here, it's all just clipped in, so. Okay, so it's easiest to remove the caps or loosen them, break them free while they're still pinched up in the bike. So we're gonna do that really quick. It is a 19 again, same as the axle. All right, so we've got the 19s just broke loose just so that we don't have to worry about trying to do that once they're out, because then it's like holding on tight. I don't have a vise specifically for forks, so anything you can do to make the job easier, have that little bit of foresight, it'll help. That's right. All right, you guys, so we have 3 different pinch bolts that we need to get loose. It's gonna be 1 up top on the top tree and then 2 on the bottom. They're all a 1/4 inch Allen. And then you have, I don't know if you can see it down there, but you have a 5/32 Allen on the front and the back side, right there. And those just hold the cowbells on. So we're gonna go ahead and break all of those loose and the forks should slide right out. So I'm gonna go ahead and set you guys down and we're gonna figure it out. All right, so pinch bolt here, 1/4 inch. Same over here. And then get down to the bottom here. Here. Now, they weren't this loose. I already broke them loose. And we will end up taking them all the way out to put fresh Loctite on them. And there we go. One fork leg is out. Oh yeah. All right, so now you guys can see better. Your cowbells are just right here, and it's just those 2 bolts. I've already got them loose and 1 out, but all we have to do is loosen it up the rest of the way. We'll have Dan catch it, and they are gone. All right, we did it. Okay, so now that we have the fork legs on the bench, it's kind of interesting. Harley Davidson uses the cowbells to protect from dirt getting in through your seal, but take a look at this. There is still a ton of dirt on top of that seal. So I'm actually really glad that we are switching it up and using dust seals over our regular seals instead of just trusting those cowbells, because I ride in the rain and the dirt and whatever, and obviously this is going to be an upgrade in terms of keeping dirt out, scoring on the fork tubes to a minimum, so that's all good stuff. All right, you guys, so before we get into all of the fancy new exciting parts, we need to go ahead and start disassembling and cleaning these out. My thought here, there are a few different ways that you can drain them. You can pull the cap off the top, you can pull the bottom here. I think we'll go ahead and pull the cap off the top, we'll flip them over, we'll get them draining, and then we'll run to the store, grab some lunch and some brake clean. So let's jump in. Okay, we've got our drain pan here. I'm gonna go ahead and set it on the ground here. 19 for the cap. As you guys remember, we already broke it loose, so that's gonna help out. This is sprung under tension, so when we do this, we want to go ahead and use something to hold it in place so that it doesn't just fly out and my bike is in the background and hit my bike. So we're gonna go ahead and put the 19 in, and then I'm gonna hold it's braced up against the backdrop there. I'm gonna hold on here to this cap so that when it springs out, we don't go flying. And that was almost perfect. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and remove these top pieces. Alrighty, so we've got this washer here and our spring. And same thing, we've got our spring here. Okay, so we can go ahead and remove this 12mm Allen. Sometimes it's pretty stuck and the whole assembly in there will spin with it. If it does, you're gonna have to reassemble everything really quick. It's no big deal, put the cap on. Only reason we do it this way is otherwise you have to drain it from two places and it ends up being more messy. So if you can get it done this way, it's better. No problem. Let's see if we can get that out. There is a copper crush washer in here and looks like it was stuck in there, did not come with the bolt, so you're gonna wanna make sure that you grab that. Same thing on this leg. And that crush washer stayed again. All right, so now that we have the bolt removed holding the rest of the internals in, we can go ahead and slip them out. It's gonna be your top out spring and your damper. It's gonna make a little bit of a mess here. All right. So the only thing we're actually gonna end up reusing out of everything that we've gutted so far is the top out spring, so save that. All right, so now that we have the damper and the top out spring out, if you were not changing out these fork tubes and you were just gonna go ahead and throw your cartridges on, now would be the time. You would not continue on with what we're doing next. What we're doing next is just because we are going with different fork tubes. So we're gonna go ahead and remove this metal clip in here. Once that's popped out on both of these, you're just gonna slide these fork tubes right out from the legs. So let's check that out. Clip is right here. Now you don't really need to worry about damaging your fork tube because you are replacing this, but if you were just replacing, like, let's say a leaky seal, you would want to be careful not to scratch up your fork leg. Vertical scratches are the worst because if they run vertically this way, oil can leak past the seal. So things to keep in mind. Give it to me. There we go. All right, there we go. There's our seal, our bushings. Everything looks pretty good. There's a lot of dirt actually, wow. Check that out, Dan. Feel it, that's gritty. Well, that's not great.
A lot in there.
Wow, okay. Well, you guys, I think cowbells, wouldn't trust them. If you really want to make your motorcycle on the next level of long distance trustworthy, not have issues, I would maybe consider throwing dust seals in, if nothing else. All right, and there's our little piece in the bottom. We haven't talked about that yet, but you want to be careful with that. All right, this setup is much cleaner. A lot less dirt in there. All right, you guys, so we have this fork tube fully disassembled, and as you can see, if you want to get in here, Dan, see all those vertical scratches? This bike only has 6,500 miles on it, and now you can't, when you run your thumb through them, your nail, you can't quite feel them, so those are not, well, I can actually on those. Those are not causing any oil leaks yet, but they will, so that's kind of disconcerting to see that at just 6,500 miles. Now I do ride this bike in inclement weather, and you know, so you have more dirt and debris coming in, but that's kind of unacceptable on a new bike to be seeing that. So I think these should have a dust cover from the factory, so just something to keep in mind. So this is where we have a dilemma. I ordered a whole new bushing and seal kit for these, and they show up tomorrow. So my choices are, we reuse this stuff, slip it onto the new stuff. It's probably fine, I never had any leaks, but I did find dirt on these, which I don't love. And we put it back together today, and Dan and I go riding. The other alternative is I wait. They're coming USPS, so they should show up in the morning first thing. And I install the bushings and the seals tomorrow. The mature, proper engineer thing to do would be to definitely wait for the new stuff, but we'll see what we decide to do here. All right, good morning, you guys. It is the next day. Dan and I, when we stripped everything apart, looked at everything, we couldn't in good conscience just, you know, reuse the stuff. It probably would have been completely fine. The seals look fine, the bushings look fine, but there's obviously a little bit of wear there. And if we're this far and I have the parts showing up tomorrow, it was kind of a no-brainer on whether or not we were going to use the new parts and wait. So back in the garage today. Dan will be here probably another hour or two. I'm going to get started. I've got the new seals, the whole kit and everything. So I'll take you over to the workbench here. I've got everything laid out and ready to go back together here. So we've got our cleaned out fork legs. We have our cleaned up fork tubes. We've got a little bit of fresh oil here. That is the suspension fluid oil. We're going to slap that on all of the new bushings before they slip onto the legs or the tubes here. The Geezer engineering kit that I ordered came with the new clips here, new seals, new bushings. The O-rings that I'm going to use, it did come with them in that kit, but I'm going to use the ones that Ohlins sent me. We got the new washers here, new bolts, new copper crush washers. That was a big thing about wanting to wait for the new kit. New crush washers are kind of a must. I mean, you could be fine, but I don't want to do this twice. So we've got the springs picked out. There were 2 sets of springs. Based on your information sheet here, you choose which ones. So we went with this one, which is for the fairing for my weight. We have our dust seals here. This was an added part. These are actually for a Dyna 49 millimeter, because we're not going to be using the cowbells. We have our cartridges here, and we have the little spacer kit. There are 2 sets there, and it says if you're using with a fairing, you want to use these ones. So we've got our fresh oil, springs. I've got a little bit of grease laid out here to slap on the seals, although the new kit from Geezer Engineering does already have a bunch of blots of grease on the inside, so I'll probably end up just greasing the outside, just so that when I slip it into the fork leg and send it home, it will have grease. So looks like we have everything laid out here and ready to go. We're going to start by putting all of the bushings and seals on the fork tubes here. So we'll start with that and just get it rolling. So cleanliness is going to be our friend as we do this assembly process. So we're going to wear gloves, just keep everything as clean as we can. So I'm going to spread this grease out that came from Geezer Engineering here. And honestly, I don't really know that I like the amount. I think it could have been a little bit more, but it's fine. It's going to be fine. So these do have a direction. The spring side is going to be the side that you want down at the bottom. So we're going to slip it on up. And I can tell you right off the bat, this seal is much tighter than the other seals were when I was taking them on and off. So I'm glad that we ended up waiting. So next is going to be the washer here. And there is a rounded side, and that rounded side goes up to the seal. That way this flat, sharp part is not touching. Just like that. And now we can go ahead, throw a little bit of oil on our bushing here. And we'll throw a little bit of oil here on the fork tube. Slip that right on up. And we're going to take one of our other bushings here, a little bit of oil. And that's going to slip right on there. Good to go. So you don't need to worry about these channels not lining up. Normally, like if you're doing like piston rings, let's say, you would want to clock them differently. This one sits in the bottom of the fork leg, and then this one will be up higher, and it centers the tube in the leg. So you don't need to worry about those being clocked a certain direction. So we're going to do the same thing with this one here. So now we're ready to slip our cups in. Now they will fall right back out, so you want to be sure that you're using gravity as your friend here. Okay, these fork tubes are assembled and ready to go into the fork leg. It does not matter which yet, we're still symmetrical on both sides. Pretty soon we are going to be worried about which is which in terms of cartridges, so we'll start with the right leg here, and we're just going to take the tube here. Now, like I said, we're working with gravity here. This cup will just fall out, so you got to keep it this way. If you tip it down, it can get cockeyed in the leg, and then obviously your bolt won't go in and work, you know, as it should. So, tube like this, got our leg, nice and clean, dry, ready to go. Slip it right over, and then run it down. Okay, it's bottomed out now. That cup can't fall over. So, flipped over, a little bit of grease. Now we can kind of work the seal and get it started straight before we use our seal driver. Okay, so as I was saying, I have a 48 millimeter seal driver instead of a 49. I did clear it out a little bit, not ideal, but here we are. I'm gonna try to just actually kind of hold it apart and press down on the seal. Because it looks like it's going to go without having to slide it up and down on the tube. Because the last thing, like I said, that we want to do is put vertical scratches in the brand new tube, because that's a definite point for having a leak. So looks good. Seal made it all the way in. So it looks like we are ready to go ahead and put our clip in. So clip goes in here. There's a groove in there, so you know that you've made it all the way in. And you'll hear it click. There it is. All right. Making sure that clip is seated all the way. Here at the end it's not. There we go. So this next step is only if you're not using your cowbells, or if you take my advice and add these dust seals, because I think that there was a bit of dirt in these legs for a 6,500 mile bike that should not have been there. So I think if you can do this step, you should. We're just gonna put a little bit of grease on here. This is a dust ring, and we're gonna go ahead and slip that home. Like I said, this is for a Dyna, but 49 millimeter. This also, if you're not using the cowbells, really cleans the look up, kind of finishes it off so you don't have that just well of empty. All right, dust seal is on. Got the tube all the way collapsed. Looks good. We're gonna set this aside and do the same thing with the other leg. All right, well, here comes Dan. Deja vu. All right, you guys, I forgot to hit record as I assembled the second one. Fortunately, I did a good job assembling the first one for you guys, so hopefully you're able to understand exactly what went down there. Okay, we are ready to go ahead and slide our cartridges, our top out springs, fresh Loctite, and slam these bolts in. That will hold the cartridge in place, and we can continue with the project. So now is where we need to decide which leg we're working on, because the cartridges are different. One is your rebound, one is your compression. RR, right rebound, left is compression. So the threaded one is going to be your left one. The axle goes from the right side of the bike to the left. So we're going to start with the right leg and do the rebound. The other way to know which one is rebound and compression, the holes on compression are at the top. The holes on the rebound are on the bottom here, and it is labeled rebound. But in case you were to take these caps off ahead of time and you're not sure which is which, that's how you can determine. These caps do have to come off. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and put our pull-up tool on the cartridge. Good there. We are on the right leg doing the rebound here. First thing we're going to do is drop in our top out spring. No direction, orientation matters. Right in there, good to go. Take your cartridge. Carefully slide it right on in. Make sure that's seated all the way. You'll know that it is because in this next step, we're going to send that bolt home. And if the cup is crooked and is falling out, it won't thread in, and yeah, it won't start. So red Loctite. We're gonna carefully start this by hand with our 12 millimeter Allen. And there we are, seated down. Now, just to start, I will end up torquing this later, but just to start, we're gonna set the gun to a soft setting. Good to go. So now you don't have to worry about that cup anymore falling over. You can move your tube just fine. This is ready to have oil put in it now, but first we're going to do the other leg same way. This is going to be our compression leg. First thing, top out spring. thread Loctite. And we do have our copper crush washers on here. Same thing, we're going to start it by hand. All right. These are both ready for oil. Since we have the pull-up tool already on here, we'll start with this compression leg now. We want to make sure that the tube is all the way down, which it is, and it's going to be most of the bottle, and then we'll go ahead and set the height. We might have to add a little bit more. We'll figure that all out as we go. So, fresh oil. Okay, we're gonna stop right there and see what we get. We'll probably have to add more. So now is the point where we want to start stroking the fork tube up and down, probably like 10 times, and then we'll do the actual cartridge up and down. As we're doing this, air bubbles are being evacuated. I know you're thinking it, don't even say it. I'm getting a lot less bubbles and more resistance now. So now we're gonna do 10 times with the cartridge. You can tell which is which, because as you're doing this cycling, you'll feel resistance on either the way down or the way up, depending on which cartridge it is. All right, we're not getting any air bubbles anymore. I wasn't counting because I was talking to you guys. I don't know what you think. 2 more? Yeah. All right, we're gonna do 10 more with the tube, and then I'm gonna do 10 more with the cartridge too. You don't need to, they say 10 and 10, but it's gonna do this a bunch of times on the bike, so I'm gonna just do it a few more times. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is look at our setup data sheet here, and for our weight, 200 pounds, we're gonna do 90 kilograms, and it's gonna tell us the height that we want of the oil, as well as kind of a good base point to start with compression, rebound, so on and so forth. So it's saying here 140 millimeters for the oil level. So we're gonna start with that. This is our oil suction tool. So we're gonna set this at 140, and then we're gonna set it in, and then we're gonna suck out any excess oil. You want the tube all the way down. Got that tightened down. We're gonna slide it right in, and we're gonna suck out any excess oil. Now, if we don't get any oil, that means we have to add some. All right, we are getting oil. All right, we're gonna go ahead and dump that. Alrighty, 140. Okay, so now that we have the oil level set correctly, we're gonna take our spring. There is a part number, put the part number up. That is the correct orientation. Make sure that seats down all the way. So next is going to be our spacers. There are a few different spacers in the kit, 2 different sets to be exact. You've got your bigger ones, those are gonna be for without a fairing and like a lowering kit. This is the ones for our application. We're gonna go ahead and slip this on. The bigger open groove here is for the spring. Then we're gonna pull up. We're gonna grab our hold up tool here. We're just gonna slip it down underneath the nut. Now we can remove our pull-up tool. You want to make sure that you have that nut run pretty much all the way down. That way when you put the cap on, you don't have any issues with it bottoming out on the nut, and then you're not actually fully seated. So as you remember, this is the threaded leg, this is the compression leg, so we want to grab our compression cap. Don't get those confused, that'd be a little goofy. We're going to start it by hand, and you're going to run it down till it's all the way seated, and the whole rod spins. That's gonna run the nut right up. Okay, so we've got a 14 for the top and a 13 for the nut. Be really careful not to mar this thing up. So I'm just gonna use the 14 to hold it in place, and then I'm gonna do the spinning with the nut. Okay, so now that we have the nut and cap tight, we could remove the hold-up tool here. And when you do assemble this the rest of the way, you wanna make sure that it's not crooked or anything like that. And don't forget to put your O-ring on the cap here. So that's a fully assembled cartridge ready to be closed up. So we're just gonna make sure our tube is slid up all the way. And there we go. So I got this as far as I could by hand so that I don't have to spend a bunch of time up on this cap marring it up. So I've thrown some painter's tape on the two edges that I'm going to use to tighten this up. I was not about to spend $50 on a non-marring wrench to use it once. So it's a crescent wrench and painter's tape. Don't come at me, please. I think that's gonna be plenty. Nice and clean. That cap is now tight. So now we can mess with our preload and then our compression. So for the preload, you want to back it all the way out, and then you're going to count your turns based on your data sheet. Okay, so we've set our preload base setting. We've set our spring rate base setting. We are good to do the other leg now. We're completely done with this one. Hopefully we don't have any issues. Now, keep in mind, you will see a little bit of streaking at first on your brand new fork tube. That's just gonna be mostly the grease that you used. If it continues, then you have an issue, but a little bit from the beginning, no big deal. Okay, we are on our second leg now. We're ready to go ahead and add oil. Now we're gonna go with the rod 10 times. So this one, you feel the resistance on the way up, because this is our rebound. Okay, so now that we have the damper and everything all stroked out, you go ahead and suck out all of the excess oil. We're good now to go ahead and put our spring in. Once again, part number up. Our spacer, good. Pull up, hold that for me, Dan. Put our hold up tool in. Okay, so now pull that pull up tool off. Grab our rebound cap. And we can remove our pull-up tool. Now, I just noticed, don't make this mistake, I almost forgot the O-ring. A little bit of grease. Fortunately, this is a forgiving step. Right on in there. And we're good to go ahead and button this up. So we're going to pull up on the tube here. Now I'm going to have Dan hold the top. I'm just going to spin it right on up. Okay, good enough. Okay, so same as the other one, we're going to back the preload out all the way. Backed out all the way. And now we're gonna go 15 turns in. All right, there's 15 turns. Preload is done. Same thing for the rebound. We're gonna go ahead and run this one all the way down in clicks. And then we're gonna go 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We're done. These cartridges, forks, etc. are ready to go back in the bike. Okay, so before we're ready to slide the fork legs up and in, like I was saying, we want to back out these 1/4 inch tree bolts, the pinch bolts, and throw some Loctite on them. Okay, we have our pinch bolts with fresh blue Loctite. We're just gonna run these in and get them started. Okay, so while I'm running these pinch bolts back in, I figure now's a good time to talk to you guys about why I decided to go with stock length cartridges and stock length tubes versus going +2 or in Ohlins case +2.5 overs. So a lot of people on the Rushmore style bikes would do a 2 over and then they would do 14-inch shocks in the rear. It made sense, get the whole bike a little higher, but these new bikes come with a 13-inch rear shock. So Ohlins offers a 12-inch and a 13-inch. There are other companies that offer a 14-inch. With Ohlins, you end up doing the 1-inch extensions on the bottom if you want 14 out of it. But so if you're going with what I did, which is the stock in the rear, you have a 13 in the rear, and then I have the stock length in the front, which is gonna keep the bike exactly how it was factory. If you upgrade, let's say you go 2 over in the front and you do, well, in Ohlins case, 2.5 over in the front, and then you do the 1-inch extension in the rear. So you're at 14 in the rear, you're already 1 inch higher on the front. That's not a big deal, 1 inch isn't a huge deal. It looks good, it's fine. But if you plan on running a 21-inch wheel in the front, now you've added another inch, right? So now you'd be looking at 14 with an extension in the rear, and then 2 inches higher in the front. Now you're getting into a really tall bike, which for you might not be comfortable, but you also have to consider if you're planning on selling your bike, now your resale is gonna be a little bit more difficult because you're not gonna be able to sell it to a short rider. They're gonna hop on, they're not gonna be able to touch, and they're not gonna wanna ride it. So for me, if I go with the stock 13, stocked in the front, and then I add that 21-inch wheel, it's gonna add an inch on the top, inch on the bottom, so it's 1 inch taller in the front, and then I add those 1-inch extensions. I've kept the bike exactly factory in terms of trail. I have not adjusted the suspension geometry in any way. It's gonna be +1 in the front because of that 21-inch wheel, and +1 in the rear with those extensions. So the bike will sit exactly how it did from factory, only 1 inch taller. That's why I went that route. If you're gonna do a stock wheel setup and you wanna go +2.5 in the front, you know, it's up to you. There are plenty of people that do it, but they have reported that it changes the way the bike rides. It rides worse at slow speeds. It's harder to dive into corners. Also, keep in mind, if you are going to be doing that 2.5 over, you have to buy different fork tubes. You have to buy those longer fork tubes. If you don't want gold fork tubes like I did, you could have used your stock fork tubes. You wouldn't have had to disassemble them and add all the new seals and bushings that I did. And you can run your stock fork tubes with your cowbells or without them if you're fine with the silver. So you're able to save about $550 on fork tubes if you go with the stock height. So, all right, you guys, moment of truth. It is time to slip these up and give a little pinch on these pinch bolts just to get them seated. Here, you want to come here? Yep. Take that. Okay, go down. Okay, so now that we have these started, it's time to torque them up. 18 to 22 foot-pounds. We're gonna do 20 foot-pounds, which is 240 inch-pounds, because I want to use my smaller one. You just turn the bars here, give us access. And you are gonna have to go back and forth with these. All right, do the other side. All right, bottom pinch bolts are done. Now we'll head up to the top. All right, all of our pinch bolts are torqued. We're looking good there. Before we put the axle and the brakes and everything back on, as we mentioned earlier, we do want to torque up these drain bolts here at the bottom, figure out that torque spec, and we'll knock that out. All right, you guys, so after looking up the torque spec on this 12mm Allen, it is 19 to 22 foot-pounds. We're gonna do roughly 20, 21. All right, you guys, next thing is slipping in the wheel. Okay, so we gotta lift this up and slip the ABS piece in. All right, there we go. We've got the axle started. All right, you guys, so we are at the process now where we can slip the brake calipers back on. Then we'll worry about tightening up the axle, all that stuff. Make sure you've got your ABS bracket here on the outside and your ABS obviously on the axle there. All right, so torque spec for the caliper bolts is 28 to 38. I got it set at 36, so we'll do all 4 of those. Good. All right, so calipers are tight along with that ABS sensor mount there. So next is gonna be the axle. All right, there's 75 foot-pounds for the axle. Now it's gonna be the pinch bolt. Our pinch bolt here is gonna be torqued to 18 to 22 foot-pounds. Got my torque wrench set at 20 here. All right, brake calipers are tight, torqued, good. Axle is torqued, pinch bolt is torqued. All that's left to do now is throw the fender back on. That's it.
It's done.
We're done. In Dan's words, let's drop her. And just like that, it's time to go see how this thing rides. All right, so as you guys can see, I'm giving it all I've got, diving forward, and that's what you get. We're gonna go over to Dan's bike now, which still has the stock suspension, and see how much it dives. So that's the difference. All right, you guys, this looks freaking awesome. I'm super stoked with how the bike's sitting, how it looks. I can't wait to get on and see how it feels, take you guys for a ride. One thing to point out, the nipples of the top of the cartridges here do not fit with the stock clamshell nacelle plastic piece. So we can't run those. We have a couple of options. You could either get a cool triple tree, Thrashin's making one for the new 24s that's gonna bring it 1 inch closer. I don't want the risers to be closer to me. I like where they're at, so that's out the window. Other option is drill out your nacelle or go with the CVO Road Glide one. I'm opting to ride over right now to Harley Davidson with Dan. We're gonna go order the CVO nacelle, and then I'll have access to my tops of my forks. So I think it's time to pull the bike out of the shop and see how everything feels.